Let me guess. You are just here to take pictures with the cars. Huh, the salesman didn't even look up. Test drives are for serious buyers only, not people like you. The words landed like cold metal against her skin, sharper than the air conditioning humming through the glass. Walled showroom. Chrome glinted under white LED lights, reflecting off 300,000 sports cars lined in perfect rows. The air smelled like new leather and arrogance. Every step echoed on the polished marble floors. Every eye flicked toward her, then away, with that familiar look, that pause, that subtle scan. She didn't belong, at least. That's what they thought. She stood still, a black woman in a simple tan coat and dark jeans. No jewelry, no makeup, no entourage, just a leather folder, tucked neatly under one arm, and a calm, unreadable expression. "Excuse me?" she asked, voice even. The salesman finally looked up. His smile was tight, performative, the kind of smile that said, "I have to say this, but I don't mean any of it. It's just that we've had a lot of window shoppers lately. Influencers, you know. Instagram." He laughed, as if that explained everything. She didn't laugh. Another customer, white, in a tailored suit, walked past her, and was immediately greeted with champagne and compliments. No hesitation, no scan, no suspicion. Her pulse tightened, not with anger, not yet, but with something colder, sharper, controlled. She looked around the room. 6 staff members, 3 other customers, 2 security cameras, 1 mistake. Because what they didn't know was that this moment, this exact insult, was the reason she built an empire, and she was about to remind them why. But no one in that dealership knew who they just insulted. This wasn't the first time. She had heard it before. At airports, in banks, at charity galas. She funded. "Sorry. This line's for executive guests. You must be looking for the economy lounge." "Oh, are you with the catering staff?" Different words, same poison. Born in a tiny apartment on the south side of Detroit, she learned early how people looked at her skin before they listened to her voice. Her mother was a night shift nurse. Her father, a mechanic who spoke more through tools than words. They raised her to be silent, watchful, efficient, and never expect fair treatment. By age 12, she was already making money. Not babysitting or selling lemonade like other kids, but buying and flipping broken bikes, fixing them up, selling them to richer neighborhoods. At 14, she wrote her first invoice. At 16, she negotiated her first business lease. On a laundromat, using the savings she'd hidden in shoeboxes for years. She worked alone, always, never had time for parties, gossip, or small talk. Because when you are the only black girl in the room full of suits, they don't give you time to explain. You either prove it fast, or they eat you alive. And she did prove it. By 22, she had 4 businesses. By 28, she had exited 2 of them, and reinvested in a startup fund. But she never posted about it, never did interviews, never tried to trend. Because real power doesn't seek validation. It observes, waits, chooses when to be seen. And right now, inside that dealership, she chose silence. She didn't need to defend herself to a man who didn't know how to read real value. She just stood there, breathing slowly, fingers still around the leather folder, the same one she'd carried through every boardroom for a decade. It was just another insult, another scar, but this one was going to leave a mark. And this wasn't the first time someone thought she didn't belong. Perfume lingered in the air, rich, cold, too expensive for its own good. The kind sprayed behind marble counters and worn by men with too much confidence. It mixed with the scent of new leather, engine oil, and silent judgment. A man in a blue suit was laughing at the corner, one hand on the hood of a red sports car. A young sales rep hovered beside him, nodding at every word like it was gospel. Nobody looked her way now, not directly, just quick, discreet glances, like they were checking if security had clocked her yet. She walked slowly past a black SUV, sleek, matte finish, worth more than most houses. A couple stepped aside as she passed, clutching their branded brochures. The woman narrowed her eyes, scanned her coat. No logo, no designer stitching, Not even a handbag, just her. Alone. Standing in a showroom that cost more per square meter than most city apartments. She could hear it in their silence. Why is she here? Does she work here? Lost? Shed walked into rooms like this all her life. Rooms that whispered. Rooms where luxury didn't mean comfort. It meant cold surfaces, expensive accents, and people trained to smile at the right wallets. She approached the front desk. The receptionist's smile twitched. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice syrupy, but guarded. "Yes," the CEO replied simply. "I'd like to test drive the 911 GT3 Touring." The receptionist blinked, then scanned the CEO from head to toe. Once, then again. "One moment," she said, tone shifting. "Let me get someone." A whisper passed between two staff across the floor. Another sales rep looked up, whispered something to a manager. Both glanced over. She felt it. The rising unease in the air. Not loud, not hostile, just tight, calculating. They were assessing risk, not of theft, but of embarrassment. Of making the wrong call. That's what made it worse. They weren't evil, just too used to deciding who fit and who didn't. Based on shoes, accent, posture, skin, and her presence, it short-circuited their system. She adjusted her coat, took a deep breath, heard her father's voice again. "If they underestimate you, let them. Just don't forget." She never did. But this time, something different stirred under her skin. Not the usual irritation, not the urge to leave quietly and prove herself elsewhere. Number today. Her silence felt heavy, sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. Today wasn't for walking away. Today was for teaching a lesson. But today, something inside her snapped. She'd been standing there less than 4 minutes when he arrived. Dark navy suit, polished loafers, gold tie clip that caught the light, and demanded attention. The showroom manager. He didn't introduce himself. Didn't offer a handshake. He looked at her. Then, at the clipboard in the receptionist's hand. Then back at her. "We've had some security issues lately," he said, too calmly. "So we do need to verify eligibility before offering test drives." She said nothing. He continued. "These cars aren't standard inventory. Insurance requires us to be selective." She raised an eyebrow. "Selective?" "Yes." He smiled. "We usually reserve test drives for returning clients, or referrals." He let the pause hang, like a net waiting to tighten. She glanced toward the car again, then back at him. "I am not a referral, and I haven't bought from here before," she said. "But I am interested in the GT3 Touring, now." His smile didn't move, but something in his eyes shifted. The cold calculation of someone used to winning this exact game. "I understand." He nodded. "But unfortunately, we're fully booked for the day." "You are fully booked?" she echoed, eyes narrowing slightly. He looked down at the desk, as if checking something, then said it. "We also require a refundable deposit before booking high-end drives." $10,000. Gasps weren't loud, but they happened. A couple standing nearby turned slightly, pretending not to listen. Her voice stayed steady. "That wasn't mentioned on your website." He shrugged. "It's a case-by-case basis." She stared at him, then slowly opened the leather folder under her arm. She pulled out a slim document, printed on ivory stock. It was a certified letter from his own corporate office. He glanced at it, squinted, then looked back at her with a forced grin. "We don't usually accept walk-ins for that level of vehicle," he said, louder now. "Especially without proper credentials." That did it. Phones came up, not just one. 4. Someone whispered, "Is this being filmed?" The room was too quiet. She lowered the folder, didn't flinch, didn't blink. He leaned in slightly. "Look," he said, voice dropping. "I am sure you are successful in your own field, but cars like this, they're not for aspiring buyers. You understand." She stared at him, cold, still. Then, almost kindly, she asked. What do you think I do? He smirked. Something creative? Maybe content. Influencer? He gestured vaguely toward her coat. You have a minimalist look. A few staff members chuckled softly. And that's when something inside her clicked into place. Not anger. Not yet. Conviction. This wasn't just another showroom. Another insult. Another day to forget. This place needed to remember her. And that's when she decided they needed a reminder. It started with a whisper. Is this being recorded? A man in loafers leaned closer to his wife. Half covering his mouth. Another pulled out his phone, not even discreetly, and began filming. She stood still. The manager hadn't stopped talking. His voice floated above the polished marble like perfume, slick and designed to linger. I just don't want you to be disappointed, he said loudly. Sometimes people misunderstand what we do here. We're not a showroom for browsing. She didn't move, didn't need to. His words were doing the damage. I mean, let's be honest, he added with a chuckle. You can find great content with these cars. Photos, reels. No need to drive them. Right? That laugh. It hit like a slap. She saw the receptionist shift in her seat. Uncertain. Another sales rep smirked and nudged a colleague. No one stopped him. No one said, "That's enough." She could feel the weight of it now. Not just his voice, but the room itself. The silence of complicity. The buzz of phones. The eyes pretending not to look. Then lingering too long. And worst of all, she'd been here before. Different faces. Same script. She thought of the job interview at 21. When they smiled and said she was impressive. For someone like you. She remembered the bank officer who double-checked her ID 4 times. Then asked if her father was co-signing. The charity board that accepted her check, but never offered her a seat. It all looked like respect. Until you listened. Until you watched closely and saw the rot. She exhaled quietly, hands still resting on her folder. The manager leaned forward. If you'd like, I can walk you to the entrance. It's right this way. That was it. The final move. He wasn't asking anymore. He was dismissing her, a black woman. Alone. Surrounded by suits, cameras, smirks. And yet, she didn't step back, didn't look down, didn't explain. Instead, she let him finish his sentence, and then met his gaze. Flat, silent, unmoved, because she understood something he didn't. Power doesn't need to shout. It remembers. It waits. And when it moves, it doesn't knock. Across the room, someone whispered, "This is going viral." She looked around. 4 phones, 6 faces watching. Every second they filmed was another line she wouldn't need to say later. He had written the story himself. And she was just letting the camera roll. She didn't defend herself, didn't make a scene, didn't argue. She let the insult float. Let the silence wrap around it. Let the showroom drink its own reflection. She didn't raise her voice. She raised her value. The silence was stretching. So thick. So heavy. It felt like the walls were listening. The manager turned slightly, his smile faltering. The crowd was still. Even the receptionist avoided eye contact now. Then, from behind the service desk, a voice broke through. "Sir, I think you should check the name on that document again." It wasn't loud, just clear. Every head turned. A young man in a gray vest, barely older than 22, was holding a clipboard. Nervous, thin voice, but steady hands. The manager blinked. "Excuse me?" The employee swallowed. "That letter she showed you. I think I've seen it before. I think I've seen her before." The manager stiffened. "We've got this under control. Jake, please return to detail bay." But the young man didn't move. He glanced at the CEO, then back at the clipboard. "No, sir. I think she's from corporate. Or something above corporate." That did it. The word corporate wasn't just noise. It was a virus. It spread. The sales reps looked at each other. One of them lowered his phone. Another took a step back. The manager's face changed, only slightly, but enough. The sharpness faded, replaced with calculation. The CEO said nothing. She turned her gaze toward the young man, steady, unreadable, but there was something in her eyes now. A flicker, not of gratitude, of acknowledgement. "Jake." That was his name. Shifted awkwardly, then looked down. He didn't know exactly who she was, but he knew power when he saw it. Not the loud kind. Not the flashy watches or the fast cars. Real power. Still, silent, cold as glass, sharp as strategy. He'd seen people pretend before, pose for cameras, talk about money. But this woman, she didn't need to talk. The room was already bending around her presence. The manager cleared his throat. Well, even if she's from corporate, we still have protocols. A weak attempt. Everyone knew it. The receptionist's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the intercom. "Would you like some water?" she asked. Voice a whisper. The CEO didn't respond. Her silence had become the loudest sound in the room. Jake stepped back slowly, but not before saying, almost to himself, "She didn't even flinch." That's how you know. It wasn't a rescue. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was the first crack in the wall. And for her, that was enough. Because one voice, just one, had reminded the room that respect wasn't optional, and that no amount of silence could erase presence, and that whisper was all she needed. The room had shifted, just slightly, after Jake spoke, but the manager wasn't done. Not yet. He wasn't the kind to back down. Not in front of staff, not in front of cameras, and definitely not in front of someone who challenged his control. He took a slow step forward, eyes locked on the CEO. "I don't care what she flashed," he said to no one in particular. "This is a showroom, not a playground." He picked up the document she had laid down earlier, the certified corporate letter, and held it up between two fingers like it was a receipt for fast food. "Anion can print a logo," he scoffed. "I could make one right now." Then, with a motion too fast, too intentional, he crumpled the page and tossed it toward her feet. The paper hit the polished floor with a whisper. Gasps. One woman covered her mouth. A man murmured, "No way." He wasn't finished. "I've worked here for 9 years," he said, voice louder now. "We serve real clients, not TikTok entrepreneurs, not street dealers with business cards." That line, street dealers, someone whispered, "Jesus," under their breath. Phones were up again. More than 5 now, red lights blinking, cameras tracking every word, every movement. He reached for the folder still in her hand. She didn't flinch, but pulled it back before he could touch it. He slammed his palm on the marble counter instead. A loud crack. The receptionist jumped. The air vibrated with the sound, then stilled again. "She doesn't belong here," he said to the room. "And if corporate has a problem with that, they can call me directly." He turned to walk away, but he hadn't moved more than 2 steps when he heard it. The softest sound in the room. Fabric brushing tile. He turned. She had bent down slowly, gracefully, and picked up the crumpled paper, unfolded it, flattened it on the counter. Then she looked up and smiled. Not sweetly, not politely. A smile like ice under pressure. Sharp, restrained, surgical. A smile that said, "You just made the biggest mistake of your career." The manager froze mid-step. The room did too, because everyone, even the ones pretending not to watch, felt it. The shift, the silence that wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting for her. She bent down, picked up the papers, smiled. She didn't rush. She smoothed the paper against the marble, folded it cleanly, then slipped it back into the leather folder, all while the room held its breath. When she looked up, her voice, the first real sound from her since she entered, was like velvet pulled tight across steel. "Is that how you speak to all your executive partners?" The manager blinked. "Excuse me." She stepped forward, just 1 step, and placed the folder gently on the counter. Inside was a second document. This one bore a signature. A seal. "I wasn't planning to stop here today," she said evenly. "I just happened to be driving by after closing a meeting 3 blocks away. But I am glad I did." The manager frowned, confused now. The staff behind him shifted. She opened the folder and turned it around for him to read. His eyes scanned the heading, then froze. Board of Executive Oversight Fay Velocity Automotive Group LLC. "That's our parent company," he muttered. She nodded. Slowly. "Correct." His voice dropped. "You work for them?" "I don't work for them," she said. "I own part of them." Then, one final blow. "I am one of 3 majority shareholders, overseeing operational conduct across 12 states, including this location." Silence detonated. Visible. Sharp. One of the sales reps actually stepped backward. Another whispered, "You've got to be kidding me." She kept her eyes on the manager. "This letter," she said, tapping the paper, "was sent 2 weeks ago. Your team was notified that a silent audit would occur sometime this quarter." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. "You failed," she said quietly, publicly, spectacularly, on camera. She gestured toward the blinking red lights still recording. Someone dropped their phone. The receptionist gasped audibly. One of the assistants sat down, pale. The manager tried to speak. I didn't recognize. "I am not here to be recognized," she said. "I am here to observe how customers are treated, especially those who don't walk in wearing Rolexes and tailored suits." She looked around the room, eyes everywhere. No one smirking now, no one whispering, just one woman, standing calmly, surrounded by the ruins of their assumptions. "I've built empires without needing to be seen," she said, "but today, I let myself be seen." She let the silence hang. The power of her stillness was louder than any scream. And just like that, the room turned upside down. The room was already stunned, but she hadn't even started. She tapped the folder again, not to intimidate but to educate. "This location," she said calmly, "is one of 63. The manager blinked. 60. "What?" 60. 3 dealerships under the Velocity Automotive umbrella, she continued. "Across 12 states. 8 brands, 2 luxury performance lines." She looked at him, then at the stunned staff behind him. "Last fiscal year, our group cleared $1.9 billion in net revenue. 47% of that came from upsells, warranties, and exclusive test drives." A pause. "Test drives," she repeated, her gaze sharp. "Like the one I requested." No one spoke, no one moved. Even the cameras had lowered, as if their operators forgot they were holding them. "I sit on the strategic board that reviews performance, retention, and customer engagement across our dealerships," she added. "That includes reviewing footage, reports, patterns." Her eyes didn't blink. "I read your name last week. 3 complaints in Q2, 1 involving discriminatory language. All settled quietly." The manager visibly paled. "I let it go then," she said, "because I believe in growth." She stepped closer. "But now I know. It wasn't a mistake. It's a habit." His hands twitched. I was just..." "You were just doing what you always do," she said, "treating customers like liabilities instead of opportunities." She turned to the receptionist. "Your name?" The woman stammered. Amanda." She nodded. "Amanda. Thank you for offering me water. That's more than your manager did." Amanda blinked, half relieved, half terrified. Then the CEO looked back at the rest of the staff. "Some of you laughed, some recorded. None of you intervened." Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't need to. "You work in an industry where perception is everything. And yet, you've never learned to look deeper than surface." A moment passed. Then she added, "You judged me by my coat, my shoes, my silence." She stepped to the side. "And in doing so, you disqualified yourselves, not me." She let the weight of her words settle. No grand gestures, no yelling, just cold facts, an unbearable truth. And for a moment, nobody dared breathe, because it was clear now. She didn't just visit this dealership. She owned its future. But she wasn't done. He looked cornered. Not physically. There were no walls closing in. But something about the air made it hard for him to breathe. The manager took a half step forward, then stopped, cleared his throat. "Look," he began, forcing a chuckle. Here has obviously been a misunderstanding." Silence. Dead. Cold. Waiting. He continued. "I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I just thought." He stopped himself. That was the problem. What he thought. He looked around, hoping for backup. The sales reps avoided his eyes. Amanda looked down at her keyboard. Jake stood still, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "I didn't know who you were," he added, voice thinner now. The CEO tilted her head slightly. "So if I were someone else?" "Cis treatment would be acceptable." "No, that's not. He was unraveling. The polished persona, the slick sales tone, the dominant posture. Gone. Now he looked like a man caught speeding with a badge in the backseat. We have protocols. He tried again. She said nothing. The room didn't help him. No laughter now. No nods. Only silence. He turned toward the customers, almost pleading. We try to protect the brand. We get all types in here. A woman raised her eyebrow. A man folded his arms. Even the receptionist turned slightly away. There it was, the moment, when a man realizes the room he once commanded now sees through him. When authority evaporates, and all that's left is noise. He opened his mouth again, but even he knew it was useless, because whatever he said now wouldn't change the fact. He threw corporate documentation on the floor. He insulted a shareholder. He mocked a woman who walked in with more power than anyone in that building, and he did it with cameras rolling. All she did was stand still. She never shouted, never threatened, never bragged. She simply watched, and the room watched her, and watched him fall apart. The CEO turned slightly. Not to leave yet. Not to forgive. Just enough to let gravity do the work. The silence she left behind wasn't empty. It was loud. It echoed. It judged. She hadn't even raised her voice. But he was silenced. She let the silence stretch. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was sovereign. A silence that belonged to her now. Then quietly, she reached into her folder once more, pulled out a second envelope, sealed in red wax. This, she said, placing it on the counter, is a reassignment order. The manager blinked. What? She didn't repeat herself. Instead, she opened the document, unfolded it, and began to read aloud, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Effective immediately. Bradley Carter, Sales Floor Manager, Velocity Auto, is hereby suspended pending review of conduct, compliance, and customer relations violations, pursuant to clauses 4A and 9F of internal ethics policy. Someone gasped. He stepped forward. Wait? What? You can't. She looked up. I can, she said. I just did. But my position was built on perception, not performance. He swallowed. I have a team. They'll be reassigned, she replied. You train them, they'll recover. He opened his mouth, then closed it. She turned to Amanda, the receptionist. Please forward this letter to HR before noon today, and make sure a copy is sent to district operations. Amanda nodded, almost automatically. She looked at Jake. We'll be starting internal compliance training next quarter. I want you on that rollout team. His eyes widened. Yes, ma'am. And then? The final move. She turned to the stunned showroom. As of this morning, she said, I finalized acquisition of 3% controlling interest in this location's franchise group. Dead silence. I now hold breaking authority on operational decisions, including hiring, conduct, and expansion approvals. She didn't say it as a threat. She said it as fact, which was worse. The former manager, looked at her like a man watching a hurricane through glass. You planned this? She smiled faintly. Number you did. He looked down. No apology. No redemption arc. Just quiet. As if he finally understood the scale of what he'd triggered. And her? She gathered her folder, smoothed the papers once more, then glanced at the nearest car. The one he said wasn't for people like her. I'll take that one, she said. The GT3 Touring. Have it delivered. She paused. But not from this location. And just like that, she turned away. One final glance at the ruined throne behind her. No anger, just sovereignty. And the silence that followed was louder than applause. Outside the showroom, the city kept moving. Engines roared. Horns blared. Life resumed. But inside that glass-walled luxury palace, time had frozen, just long enough for the old rules to collapse. The kind of rules that judged worth by shoes, that mistook humility for weakness, that saw skin before skill. She didn't turn back, didn't gloat, didn't lecture. Because she didn't need to. Her presence had rewritten the rules without a single raised voice. Some say power is volume, visibility, dominance. But real power? It's precision, it's presence, it's knowing you belong, even when the room says you don't. Especially then. She'd spent years in silence, building, learning, stumbling in rooms not made for her. And every insult, every slight, every dismissal, became fuel. She never planned on revenge. But life has a way of handing you a microphone when you least expect it. and giving you an audience that once refused to listen. And when that moment comes, you don't scream. You speak. With numbers, with clarity, with calm. Because nothing unsettles the powerful like someone who doesn't need their validation. In the end, she didn't just buy a car, she bought respect. She didn't just fire a man, she flipped a system. And maybe, just maybe, someone watching that day learned. You never know who's standing in front of you. So treat every voice like it matters. Because one day, the person you dismissed might be the one holding the keys to your future. And she won't even need to say a word.